from the program, and Lee Williams, an asylum seeker. So without further one thing I wanted to say was we have Keely Malone in the house, and apparently George was telling me that she and he did the very first Saturday morning program about 7 years ago, and it was on the topic of reparations. So I just wanted to welcome Keely to do, yeah. So, okay, thank you so much.
You got a lot of the details wrong, I just want to tell you.
We collectively got a lot of the details wrong.
Yeah, we collectively.
Yeah, you said every Saturday.
Oh, and once a month.
So, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
How are you doing? I am Al Green, Ministry Director of the LGBT Asylum Task Force. It is definitely great to be out here with you folks to share in the message about what it is that we do as the LGBT Asylum Task Force, and also to have a discussion based on race and what our experiences have been as asylum seekers with new transplants into this country. And then the hope is that we'll have a free-flowing dialogue on the similarities and possible differences between what our experiences have been. So first start off with that, actually. So there's Lee, who's with me as well. Lee is an asylum seeker from Jamaica. We've been here for how long now?
About a year and 7 months.
Okay. So somewhat new, but not that new. Has been here long enough to kind of get a lay of the land and to have some interesting discussions with folks regarding race. So to get into it about the task force. So we're a mission of the Haddon Park Congregational Church in Worcester, Massachusetts. We formed in 2008 when a gay asylum seeker, Linford, who's pictured here, Linford was referred to Pastor Judy Hanlon because he was having difficulty in preparing adequately for his asylum case. He was homeless, he was hungry, and he had doubts as to whether God loved him as a gay man. All of this is just based on religion, religious persecution that he faced in Jamaica. And so he was crying all the time, couldn't prepare for his case, couldn't focus, and his attorney said, okay, well, there's an aspect to this that I can't handle as just an attorney. And so she remembered that Pastor Judy had been very vocal in the state when the whole debate was going on around equal marriage. And so his attorney contacted Pastor Judy, and the church got together, provided housing, provided food, and support for Linford until he could support himself. And so it was a huge learning process. I mean, as I imagine, like most folks that we come into contact with, there wasn't much knowledge around the asylum, right, and what that process entails. And so the church learned, and over time, Linford, who wasn't able to access resources elsewhere, referred the task force, or just referred the church to his other friends who were having similar difficulties. And from that, it just expanded and grew, and we've now supported, since 2008, more than 200 people from over 20 of the 70 plus countries where it's still illegal to be LGBTQ. Now, that is, it's been expanding, growing in subsequent year. I mean, just last year alone, we supported 43, so that's what, roughly a quarter, almost a quarter of the individuals came last year, right? And so we supported 43 people from 6 countries. So far this year, we've helped 34 people from 5 countries. And so we've been, whenever it is that we get an influx or infusion of donations, we up the support that we do. It's, what we provide is, like I said before, we provide the housing, we provide food, we provide a small monthly stipend. We have monthly workshops that are geared towards self-sufficiency, right? So we bring in speakers who have access to resources that an asylum seeker or someone who's new to this country would probably need within their first couple of years. So we have folks who work with Workforce Central, which is a job-based skills training program within Worcester. So they come to our meetings and provide pamphlets and resources that they have. We've had Planned Parenthood. We've had we sometimes do resume workshops. We do workshops on finding a job, finding an apartment, where to look, questions to ask, how to obtain a driver's license. What else have we done? Budgeting. I mean, it's a whole gamut of topics, like I said, that would be useful to individuals being new to this country. I mean, the majority of folks, if not all, actually, of the folks that we've assisted were skilled professionals in their home countries, right? And just because of who they are, who they love, have had to emigrate to the U.S. And even though they were successful in their home countries, the processes that they would have to have gone through there might not necessarily hold true here in the U.S. And so we try to go through on a 6-month basis, just repeating the ways in which things are done here so that folks can be successful. So we do that. We have group activities that are geared at getting individuals to come out of their apartments and to socialize and to network and to have access to more resources and ways of getting better mental health well-being to that state. We also provide right. Then we also provide a connection to, like I said before, different social and legal services to folks. As you might imagine, an individual might necessarily have, I mean, I know I don't, might not have enough money saved up to go through the entire 8, 12, 16-month-long process of seeking asylum before they can actually legally work to support themselves. So you're talking an extended period of time. And so they wouldn't necessarily be able to afford the $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 cost that it is to hire a private attorney to walk them through the asylum process. And so a lot of it is spent trying to identify free resources that folks can tap into. Thankfully, we're in Massachusetts where there is health safety nets and limited where folks can at least get the basic health care. And a couple of organizations, the main one being Care Project in Boston, that offers pro bono legal support for asylum seekers.
What's it called?
Care Project, P-A-I-R. So just a breakdown of the structure. So we are under our Missions and Social Justice Committee of the church, and we're broken up into a steering committee and auxiliary. The auxiliary deals with the finances and intake and decisions regarding that. And then the steering does everything else. And that one is open to members of the wider community, not just members of our church. And so we have folks from different congregations, folks who aren't associated with any faith-based organization at all, that come together and meet monthly and plan activities, figure out ways of fundraising, keeping in touch with donors, and making sure that the needs of asylum seekers are taken care of. So we'll do a rundown of what's happening with each individual and support that's needed and ways in which we can identify resources that will address those. So, like I said, we've helped over 200 people from more than 20 of the 70 countries where it's still illegal. As you can see on the map, it's a huge cross-section of countries. And when we say where it's illegal, we're talking about anything from being mobbed in the streets to being thrown out of your homes by your family and your communities and forced to live in storm drains next to the financial district in the capital, which is what happens in Jamaica, to being sentenced to death and being in prison. So there's a whole range. And even though it's 70 countries that have laws on the books, culturally, it might still not be accepted in some of the countries where it's legal to be human.
What's the one in South America there?
That would be Guyana.
And then Jamaica, they're the only ones over there?
Well, it's a compact.
So small.
Oh,
Yeah.
you
But
can't
it's
tell other islands?
yes, yes.
Yeah.
So you're talking about the majority of the Caribbean, three swaths of the Middle East, Russia, Africa. Yeah. I'd say actually the profile of the majority of asylum seekers that we've assisted is Jamaican, Ugandan, Kenyan,
Saudi Arabia.
right, so and we've had a few people in Saudi Arabia, Indian, 20 plus countries. And yes, we've had some folks in Russia as well. It's from all over. I'd say primarily we've got folks from those two countries because that's where the first few people came from. And so it's just been passed by word of mouth. So I might have received assistance, and I have friends back home who I know are struggling and are in danger. And so we know that there really aren't that many resources out there that offer this level of comprehensive support for the duration that's actually needed. And so I'd say to Bailey, here is the task force that has been extremely beneficial, and you might benefit from that as well. So, Asylum, from start to finish, it's a pretty lengthy process. And Lee can probably add to that. It requires a lot of patience.
The asylum process it's very frustrating. It's very, as I was explaining to somebody, for those of us who came to this country legally, because if you came illegally, you would be put in detention, you would be arrested. So when you arrive legally, you have a year in which you are legally allowed to file for asylum. Now, the issue with filing for asylum is not as easy as we think it is, because if you jump and file and you don't have the proper paperwork, your application is not properly prepared, then that could be the end of you, meaning that you will be deported if you get it wrong once. You have like one chance to get it right. So in my case, it took me 9 months to find an attorney that would take my case. And that, two things contributed to that. One, attorneys are scarce that does this, and the second thing is that a lot of attorneys were afraid because they didn't want to lose the case. If you get what I'm saying, they don't want to lose. They want to ensure that they do everything to win because of what was happening in the political system. Now, once you file for asylum, 6 months after that, you are eligible to apply for a work authorization. So I waited 9 months just to find an attorney, actually. Then 2 weeks before the 1 year came to an end, when I had the time to file for asylum, that's when my asylum application was submitted. So I've been waiting almost a year, preparing, trying to find an attorney, then prepared, get all my documentation, then file for asylum. Then have to wait 6 months after that before you can actually apply for a work authorization. Can you imagine what that does to somebody? So those are the challenges. And within that period of time, you file, you are waiting to get a hearing. And you know the system right now, it's very difficult to get hearing, especially now when things have changed up. And what the current administration did, they were trying to get people out of the system as early as possible, so they kind of crammed the application and was giving you only 21 days to prepare for a hearing. That didn't work out very well, so it seems like things have gone back into a backlog because I'm still waiting for a hearing to this day. And I've been here since the 1st of October 2017. So the only advantage I've had is that recently I've been granted work authorization after many months. So it's not a walk in the park when you enter this country as somebody who is seeking asylum. You know, I don't know if you want to say anything else, but that's in a nutshell. Yes.
From what I've heard of stories from people in the task force, is like in some ways the worse your story is, the better your chances.
Unfortunately.
And the more likely you are to like find a lawyer who wants to take it because they want to win. So you have to show that your life is really, really threatened.
Yeah,
And
that is so
so you have
true.
to tell these horrible stories.
It's true, and it's very difficult. For me, I had to write a 12-page document, back and front, from I was a child, and I had to detail all the horrible things that I've been through and I've experienced in Jamaica, you know, to prove to the US government that I am who I say I am. You know, I've never in my life thought I would have to do something like that, to relive all that pain. Up to yesterday, I had to read my document again because my lawyer sent it to me and said, Lee, this is the final draft. Please read through again to make sure every I is dotted and every T is crossed. And the pain, the agony, the tears, like, seriously, how is it that I'm still alive? You know, and then I have to go prepare to go in front of somebody, a perfect stranger, and try to prove to them that this is my life and beg them to give me an opportunity to live. That's what I'm begging for, my life. I'm begging somebody, a perfect stranger, for an opportunity to live life that this universe gave to all of us free. You know, and I have to now be begging somebody. I was an engineer in my country. I was a teacher, an engineer, I was an instructor. I have my resume. When my lawyers saw my resume, they're like, Lee, oh my God, you know, they cried tears. I'm like, yes, but coming here, I'm like nobody, because I have to start all the way from scratch. And now to prove that I can incorporate and be a good person and that I'm a good person and not a criminal. And that's fine. If I have to do it, I just have to do it, but I just never thought that I would come to this, you know. That's the reality. Get somebody.
Oh, yes.
If you're going to come to this later, that's fine. But could you tell us, according to United States law, what the grounds for granting asylum are? I mean...
And so, and that's a very excellent question because it is frustrating. Nina has spoken about this numerous times. It is frustrating when you see that certain people say that asylum seekers are illegal when that's not at all anywhere near the truth. In order for you, well, asylum seekers is a category of refugees that's enshrined in law. Right? The difference between a traditional refugee and an asylum seeker is that the refugee would have approached an organization outside of the country, outside of the US, and sought protection there, and gone through the process in maybe a third-party country. And then after being approved, and that's usually a few years as well, and done all the background checks and everything, then be given authorization to come to the U.S. and given a social security number and a work authorization at the time of entry. An asylum seeker would do all that process whilst already present here. And so it's the same things of having to go through background checks, having to make sure that you fit the definition of an asylum seeker, which means that you belong to a persecuted group. In the case of the LGBT asylum task force or asylum seekers, belong to LGBTQ or the community, and they are from a country that is hostile to LGBTQ individuals or to whatever social group it is. And then you have to have a well-founded fear. So you have to be able to prove that there are no safe havens in that country. There's nowhere that you can go, right? So you have no other choice but to leave. So those three requirements are needed. And once you meet those three requirements, technically you're supposed to be granted asylum. It's a process that has two different tracks, right? And so it all depends on how it is that you go about seeking asylum. The majority, I'd say probably 95% of the individuals that the task force have assisted have come to this country on a visa, right? So they have either a student, work, say tourist, visitors visa. They'll enter the country, right, and then apply at some later point at an asylum office. The other track is you can apply at a port of entry. So it could be an airport, seaport, or at a border crossing.
That's when you get arrested.
Right, and so folks who apply there, they generally are supposed to be kept there for a few weeks in the detention facility, and then they'll be released, right? And then at a later date, they'll have their hearings and they'll come back. You know, what's been happening is lately there's been a push to not have folks be released on bond to then come back later. And there's an effort to suppress the number of people who are seeking asylum, whether it is through fear of the process or through actively making it harder for folks to engage in that. But basically what's happening should not be happening, and asylum seekers are not illegals. People can be illegal, yeah.
So when people apply for entry, are they staying in detention or are they being deported?
They're staying in detention, or at least they're supposed to be, and then released after that.
Yes, Office of Refugee and Resettlement, which gives information on potential sponsors for people in detention. Is that apply to asylum also?
Yes, and so we've had folks be referred to us for housing, so they're released to us. We definitely don't have resources to pay for to sponsor an individual. I think it's like 5,000 or something for some, but there are other entities that will do that, and then we'll be the housing agent.
But in other words,
Sure.
if because right now there's this really bad connection between the Office of Refugee Resettlement and ICE. ORR gives ICE information on potential sponsors for kids in prison camps. And then what they do is ICE will report those potential sponsors if they're from, Hispanic countries. So I wonder if that situation, if that applies to asylum seekers or not.
I wouldn't be able to say definitively on that. Possibly.
When you file for asylum, they give you a receipt. With that receipt, it allows you to stay in the territory. So that means that I technically cannot or should not, because in my case, I was not to be sent out. I wouldn't want to use the term legal, but it gives me a little status, as in if the police or I should pull me over somewhere or stop somewhere, I can show them that receipt that I am filed for asylum. So it kind of protects me in a sense. So in that case, if that person filed for asylum, technically ICE would not or should not deport them unless they commit some other crime or something. But that kind of gives you a little cushion until you get a hearing.
And so going back to the timeline, after, sure.
I just need to say something to the audience. Everybody, these two gentlemen have come from Worcester to speak with us, and I really want to hear what they have to say, and I'm a little uncomfortable with how much feedback is coming from the audience already. We may be asking questions that they're already going to answer, so I would politely request that we keep our questions until the end, and just listen and learn from them. Thank you.
So going back to the timeline, after an individual has received asylum, right at that point, then they can, a year after that, apply for their green card, and then 5 years after that, you can apply for citizenship. It's generally advised that asylum seekers do not attempt to, well, you can't leave the country until you have your green card. But it's generally also advised not to return to your own country until after you've received citizenship. And so you're talking about, even if it is that you wanted to go for a few days just to see family, you're talking about at least 6, 7, 8 years before you can get in touch with or reconnect with your family. And so for many individuals, it's hard. We've had folks in our program who have had family members be ill and die and not be able to attend funerals and to be there during the last days. And so it's, in order for someone to take the step to seek asylum, it's not an easy decision. I mean, I know that I debated it for almost a year because I knew that I wouldn't be able to stay as close to my family as I'd like to. And there's some people in my family who I love dearly who still don't know that I'm seeking asylum. And just up to yesterday, I was talking to my dad and my grandma, and they're like, oh, we really want to see you, and hopefully we can see you during the Christmas time. And it's like, I can't tell you that I'm seeking asylum, that I'm gay, but I still love you, and I know that for sure I won't be able to visit you and see you at Christmas time. But still having to lie and say, okay, well, possibly. So it's definitely, and again, that's the frustration. I mean, it's
Tears are like,
yeah. I mean, to leave your family and your friends and everything that you know, even though, right, a huge portion of society does not accept you for who you are, there's still aspects of it that you love. I mean, it is home. I mean, the stuff that you see on TV about Jamaica with the white sandy beaches and all of that, it is true. I mean, it's a beautiful country, the food's excellent, the weather is awesome year-round. And so having to give that up reluctantly because your life's in danger is not an easy decision.
just to add to that quickly, one of the things that tear me apart the most is that I have family and friends that, you know, I have to sometimes pretend like they don't even exist. Not because I want to, but because it hurts so much. You know, I have lost friends since I've been here that are LGBTQ that have been killed. You know, just coming up to a year now, I lost a very dear friend of mine who was a young minister. He was just 29. He was shot in the back 7 times, right in his church, you know, preaching. So these are the realities that we face. I lost a friend that was a dentist. He was stabbed several times and left to bleed to death in his car. You know, I lost another friend that was stabbed. So these are our realities. So when we escape, we're escaping really sad realities. But when we come here, we face other sad realities too. So it's like we are in between two walls many times, and we're wondering, oh my God, which one do we really, really choose? I've asked myself several times, is it worth it? You know, especially now when you see how things just hit you so hard, like, wow, why do I have to be struggling? Why do I have to be begging? Why do I have to, you know, belittling myself? You know, I can accomplish much more. I can give much more to society, but society has me cornered. Like, okay, you are just, you know, a little dirty immigrant, and being black doesn't help sometimes either. You know, that those are realities that we have to talk about. You know.
So I'll just briefly run through this. I mean, it is a pretty costly mission, right? It's about $32,000 per month that we have to fundraise. We do about a third of that at our gala, and we have information over there. It's going to be October 5th at the DCU Center in Worcester. And then we raise about another third with grants, and then another third by going out to speak at different events, having individuals donate or having them have their organizations donate to us. It is a constant effort to do that. It is, like I said, it's very, as you can see, it's very costly, primarily because even though we're operating a shelter, so to speak, it is far more comprehensive support, right, than a traditional shelter that might just be for overnight sleeping, and then you have to vacate during the day, and there really isn't much programming. Or even if you're able to stay there for an extended period of time, it's really more short term. So you're looking at maybe a few weeks or maybe a month or two, whatever it is, and not supporting people who need all the support that they can get for the whole duration. You're looking at 8 to 16, 17 months per person. And so we provide all that support, and it has been very beneficial because 100% of the individuals that we've helped have gone on to successfully claim asylum. And that is huge when you compare it to what happens in the national context, where in 2016, and I'd imagine that there are a lot more asylum seekers now than then, in 2016, only 27% of asylum cases were successful. So it means that we're doing something right? Providing all of this community, all this support, right? Making sure that folks have access to healthcare, to safe housing, to food, right? Having all these basic needs taken care of that are really needed has worked. And so we try as best as possible to fundraise this amount of money, and we try to get folks to, in their own communities, to have their own fundraisers or approach other entities to kind of help us. Right? I mean, we have a core group of people who work within the steering committee that are based in Worcester, but our support really comes from all over the U.S. really. And so we try to basically be the avenue through which multiple people, multiple entities are doing this work. All right, so how it is that you can help? Definitely fundraising and grant writing, or if you come across grants that you think we could apply for, forwarding them to us. It does not matter the amount of money, right? We've had fundraisers and grants that would be for a few $100s, and we've had some for a few thousand. It all adds up and helps. And so definitely, if you can assist with that, if you want to sit on our grant writing subcommittee, by all means, you're welcome to do that. We meet once a month. If you're more local, so maybe not for you, but we sometimes provide rides to appointments, helping to learn to drive or to cook, search for jobs, getting around and getting acclimatized to being in Central Mass and what life is like here. Helping folks to identify jobs, right? So if you come across something that might be beneficial, to an asylum seeker, definitely forward that to us. And then we also act as advocates with folks, on behalf of folks, when they go out to seek housing, right?
Yeah, that's a big one.
Being new to this country, folks would not have any rental history. Just starting off with working wouldn't necessarily have the level of income that some landlords would be looking for.
Credit score.
And all that, right? And so we would say, well, they've been with us for X period of time. We can verify that they're good and they're worth it, and just talk of landlords on their behalf, and it's worked so far. Basically, all of the asylum seekers, or at least in the 3 years that I've been associated with the task force, have gone on to have stable housing and a stable job within 2 months of leaving our support. And so it's definitely, we try as best as possible to make sure that people are on the right footing when they are eligible to work. You can come to our community meal. They're every second Monday of the month at our church. Pastor Casey, or former Pastor Casey, comes to that on a regular basis. There we have asylum seekers. All those who are receiving our support, they're mandated to go. But also those who are in transition out of our support will still come to these monthly meetings. And we also have our supporters, or anyone who wants to know more and to meet with asylum seekers and get to know them on a personal basis, to know what it is that their individual needs are at a given time and how it is that they can assist. We encourage folks to come to that. We also have the opportunity for different groups to cater the meal for that. We generally have anywhere from 60 to 80 individuals in attendance, and for the core group of us who run the task force, it can be a lot to prepare that. So we invite other groups to come out and to offer the meal, and then use it as an opportunity to get your members to come and to learn more about the task force and to get acquainted with us. And then also organizing events wherever it is that you're located. Again, it could be a couple $100 that some of the college students are able to fundraise, or it could be a few thousand. Whatever it is, we will take it. And if you need us to come out and speak, will the task force provide materials, so brochures or other items, we can definitely do that. And so we actually are working on some future stuff. There's a documentary that's almost done. We are currently renting a triple-decker and are about to purchase another triple-decker to house people. And that way we're able to work more efficiently. 2 years ago we were in 11 different locations in Worcester. Worcester is not like Greenfield. We've got quite a bit of rush hour traffic, and so having to navigate all of that, myself, the only paid employee, as well as the small core group of folks that we have working, wastes a lot of time and effort. So we consolidate that. We were able to provide more better programming, and folks can interact and socialize with each other more easily, rather than having to travel halfway across the city in order to do that. And then we want to also have closer partnerships with different entities, right? So racial social justice rising, definitely, and other groups. It would be great to form ways in which we can partnership. Definitely, we're getting ready to hire a part-time individual to assist, just because we definitely need more help. I need more help. So if you know of an individual who might have the skill set that would be helpful in this work, by all means, please forward their contacts to me. And then definitely the gala, October 5th at the DCU Center. We need as many people there as possible. If it is that you're not able to attend, by all means, refer someone else to it. All the information is on our website, lgbtasylum.org. Also in there are the sponsorship and advertisement packages. Like I said, this is where we fundraise about a third of our annual expense. So it's very crucial that we make it as successful as possible. So that, in a nutshell, is what the task force does, and how it is that we came into being. And I know that as an immigrant, a person of color, being here has been interesting. I've been here for about 10 years now. I was on and off for 10 years, and seeing how much this country has changed in just those 10 years has been astounding. Not to say that that racism didn't exist, right, when I first came, because I got quite a bit of it in Worcester. But it wasn't so much to the fore, right, on the fore. We've talked about how difficult it was to come to this conclusion, or to the decision that we're going to seek asylum, right, and how difficult that is. And then to come here and still face discrimination, albeit for a different reason. It's difficult, right? It's difficult to, having gone through decades of being told that you're less than, and that you are immoral, that you are someone that shouldn't exist, someone that shouldn't be afforded the same rights as everyone else. And then to come here and to see, okay, well, the U.S., which is supposed to be this beacon that is advocating on behalf of marginalized and oppressed people throughout the world, having to come here and say, okay, well, it's not exactly what I thought it was going to be, right? Talking about things as subtle as people crossing the street when you're walking by, to walking home from school and having folks shut their car doors as you're walking by, to lock them. To what some of my friends had, where they had people actively running from them at nighttime because they thought that they were, for whatever reason, threatening. To having the cops being called on you at the university during the daytime where you're a student, waiting outside of a dorm for your classmates so you can go to lunch. And being asked to present your school ID because they got a report from someone that someone suspicious was hanging around the dorms who didn't look like they were a student. I don't know how much of a student I could look like with my backpack, but having to deal with that and having the cops, even though you provide your identification, wait for you to leave the dorm before they themselves left. In a city that's supposed to be progressive, in a state that's supposed to be progressive and full of immigrants, it's disheartening. Right? I mean, it's not stuff that anyone that I thought that I'd have to be dealing with at this point. It's just frustrating.
It's just the last thing you want to deal with. it's just the last thing you'd want to have to deal with, because you have so much more on your mind. You want your freedom, you want your life. You don't want to have to deal with somebody not liking you because of the color of your skin, because, you know, you look like a threat, you know, and you're profiled, you know, racially profiled. Like, you know, you walk into some store sometimes, and this is something that I've noticed for myself. I mean, the security guard doesn't look at the next person who is white who walked in, and as I come in, they look. For me, on the train, I go on the train to Boston to see my attorneys, and I don't mean to make anybody feel bad, but I notice the people, I am the last person they would sit beside because there is no other seat. And those things tear me up on the inside. I'm like, wow. And it's something that I've noticed over and over and over and over again. I'm like, wow, so because I'm black, you know, you don't sit beside me until there's absolutely no other seat left. And I'm like, wow. You know, and I sit more in the area of the train where it's a little more, the more affluent working class people. Because in my country, I used to live a certain, you know, way of life. And so I tend to, everywhere I go, I want the best for myself. So I try to live decent. I try to speak properly to everybody. So I'm going to go where people are acting more decently and nice and respectable and stuff. So, but when I find myself in that crowd and then the people shun you like you don't belong, you know, it rips you apart. You know, and sometimes they don't say it to your face, but actions, like, you know, it's weird. You go in the Uber and the Uber driver doesn't, you know, you get the feeling, and they, you know, it's hard to explain, but it's just in your face. And as I was saying, where we come from, the US has always been this country that we look up to for, you know, freedom, human rights, people being treated right and whatever. But then when I ended up here and I realized that, maybe that was only for the TV, or maybe that was, you know. So it makes you wonder, you know. And we don't always run into people like you who would sit and listen to us, and you know, it's very rare. So we really appreciate that, you know. And when I hear, you know, white people talking about racial justice, that's something that means a lot to me, because I don't hear that every single day. I mostly hear black people defending defending their justice. And I grew up always having to be fighting for justice. I'm an activist. Apart from being an engineer, I'm an activist. I always, you know, I'm into this thing of helping people with HIV, helping people. When I was in school, I was president of a student. I've always been fighting for people and for rights and for my right. And then when I come somewhere where I feel like, wow, my right has been, you know, I have to defend and try to prove to somebody that I have a right to, that makes me feel terrible, you know.
I mean, it's a difficult, it's a sad reality. I mean, just jumping onto what Lee said, it is important that there is dialogue surrounding these issues, right? It's not until you talk to individuals and you know about how it is that your actions might be perceived by a marginalized group that there can be improvement, right? Definitely, when it is that you see injustices being done, to definitely stand up and to say something. I mean, I know it might. We don't always have the courage to open up our mouths and to advocate on behalf of folks, but we have to. I mean, that's the only way that things are ever going to change. And getting folks to talk to each other and to think about, okay, well, this is what you're doing. This is how it is affecting individuals. Might not be your intention, right? but what if you did things somewhat differently? It wouldn't necessarily hurt your being. But yeah, I mean, it's been interesting, right, being with the task force and seeing folks come to terms with the reality that, okay, well, I am a person of color, and instantly with that, there are these preconceived ideas about what it is that I am, or who it is that I am. It's not like being LGBTQ, where some folks might be able to hide, they might be presenting as LGBTQ, but you can't do that with your skin color. Right?
It's out there.
And so seeing folks, for example, with one of the apartments that we used to have with the task force, having individuals right after 2016 elections being told that they should go back to their country because they were playing loud music. This individual had no conversations with them prior to that, but just assumed that because they were of color, that they probably were from some other country, and having to deal with discrimination like that. Having individuals being shunned and on dating apps, having individuals being verbally accosted at clubs in Worcester and in Boston definitely speaks to the fact that there's an issue. Right? I mean, I think that we all know that there is an issue. The question is, how do we fix it? How do we fix it? Yeah, how do we fix it?
I think it's kind of odd to talk while the group is still big. I usually wait till afterwards, so maybe other people will feel like that too. I'm actually trying to talk quite loud. Should I go to where there's a speaker?
Stand up.
Oh, can you hear me now? Okay. I actually usually like to talk after the group has broken up, but maybe other people will do this too. But I think while you were talking and saying, and I know this to be true from my life, as a person of color, a black person, when you go into a store, you'll be followed or whatever, or even you're walking home and you'll be followed as if that's not where your home is. And I think maybe even just having the conversation as people who look white, may or may not be, but with other people that are white and light-skinned, just say to each other, think about this among your friends and coworkers, where you work, just think about this every once in a while, and maybe that'll help infiltrate that consciousness. Because a lot of times I've worked at places where they do diversity trainings, and those trainings are okay, but often they're really odd or something, and that's really no real big criticism of the situation. I think the kind of conversations that you just have casually with people, your family and coworkers and people you hang out with on a daily basis is another way to share that might be just another doorway to open the hearts and minds of people to just like that.
I totally agree with you. I've had the opportunity, to go to different places and speak on behalf of the task force. And what I realize is that a lot of people, they just don't know some issues, especially when it comes on to, for example, the immigration issues. A lot of people, they were surprised to know what we had to go through as asylum seekers, as people of color. A lot of things, the information is just not readily there. So they think people just come into the country and they just get into society and that's just it. No. It's, as I was explaining before, it's a long, drawn-out, tedious process. A lot of people don't know that we get a lot of introduction, so to speak, when we are trying to find somewhere to live. I've never had this frustration to think about, wow, where am I going to live? Who's going to rent me somewhere? Because number one, the color of my skin. I've never had to deal with that. And so people don't know that we have these issues. We worry about these things. In my country, the only reason why I worry about the police is because of my sexuality. But here, I have to worry about the police because of the color of my skin. And that's something new to me. That's something that now I have to deal with. So I'm always cognizant. I just got my driver's license. Al went with me and sponsored me, and I got my driver's license recently. But now I have to be worrying about the police pulling me over because maybe, I'm black. So I have to drive within the speed limit. I have to make sure that I stop behind. I have to do everything and try to be perfect because guess what? I don't want to get into trouble. And those are the issues that I am faced with. And many of my colleagues from the task force, we are faced with those issues. We have had people being pulled over by the police and they're trembling like a leaf. My partner went to Providence the other night and he said, Lee, the cops pulled me over because I was speeding inadvertently. I didn't realize I was in a 60-something zone and I was going like 75, but the police pulled me over. And he said, he had his hands on the steering wheel and he said he had to ask the police officer, sir, could you please give me a minute, let me just calm down because I am so afraid right now. And his hands were on the steering and he was shaking like a leaf because of all that is happening. So these are realities. So I would implore you, those of you who defend us, we thank you so much, but share that with other people too. Let them know that we're not here because we wanted a joyride to be in the United States. We just wanted a new life. We just wanted to live. But while being here, I don't think it's fair that we should live in fear, of going to jail, of being racially profiled, of being pulled over by the police because we are black. Those are real issues that we face, and we want those to be shed in light. The LGBT issue, here, it might not be so much because the law would protect you in that regard, but other issues come into play as well. That's my addition to it. So I agree with you. We should share, let people know.
And so in my couple of years in this role and going out to speak with different groups and different congregations, it's always interesting seeing how many people struggle with addressing the issues surrounding minority groups, right? Whether it be LGBT, whether it be people of color, whether it be people with various abilities. It oftentimes is people say, okay, well, I hold these beliefs that are certainly progressive, right? But how is it that I can attract people, or how it is that or from these marginalized groups, or how is it that I can go ahead and make sure that I'm addressing the real needs, right, of these groups? And I always tell them, well, find someone or find people from these groups and ask them, okay, well, what are your needs? Right? What it is that you think is an issue that should be tackled in your community and that I can help and be an ally with, rather than sitting amongst yourselves and saying, okay, well, this is from the outside what I think the issues are. Right? So getting people to come to the table from these groups and actively getting them to be a part of the discussion and planning such activities, because otherwise you're not going to be very efficient, you're not going to be tackling the issues that are important. You're not going to be as successful as you want to be. And so definitely you want to make sure that you're incorporating folks in doing that, right? You get a couple of folks, right? Other folks from these minority groups will see that and in terms of, well, here is a group that on the face of it seems to be very deliberate about diversity and inclusion. And this have a ripple effect. More folks will want to get involved. So definitely that's a way in which you can start to tackle some of these issues.
Thanks for speaking.
Can you stand up?
stand up, please? Can't hear you at all.
Sure. I was just saying thanks for speaking. I just had one question about, so if I know someone who's seeking asylum and they need legal help, are there any pro bono lawyers who like work with you guys if someone doesn't have the money, or like they can't come to Worcester? That was my question.
Sure. So there's the PAIR project in Boston, PAIR. They offer a lot of support. There is Centria. It's based in Worcester. And then a lot of the legal schools will have pro bono clinics attached to them. And so I know there's Suffolk, there's EU, I believe. Northeastern has one as well. And so definitely those are areas that you can contact. We do have a listing of them, and so if you get in touch with me, I can forward that to you as well.
But they're not enough, because I've had to wait 9 months, as I said. So, you know, just to get, so they always need like a cadre of, you know, very good attorneys that would really dedicate themselves to, you know, taking on these cases, because these cases are so technical, you know, as the lawyers, my lawyers expressed to me. It's very, very, very technical, and if you make one mistake, you can fail. So they have to have, you know, very good attorneys. So, for example, PAIR Project found these attorneys for me, and they have to vet them, make sure that, you know, because they have a lot of experience and they don't want to waste people's time. And if you make a mistake, it means that someone can get deported, you know. And you want to make sure that the person will win their case once they get a hearing with USCIS, and to avoid it from even going to the immigration court, because, you know, that's where, you know, things can get really ugly. So they want to get it right. So there are very few lawyers now that are really doing a lot of these immigration cases. So the more the better, because people like myself wouldn't have to wait 9 months before an attorney can agree to represent you.
In Northampton, there's the Immigration Protection Project. It's part of the ACLU of Western Mass. Provide some of the same similar services we but particularly legal services. I can send you the link.
Please do. Yeah, I mean, there are folks out there who might work with immigration but not necessarily have experience with asylum.
Yeah.
And so that's also a very key aspect of it, but I'd definitely be interested in talking with them to see what their areas of focus are.
I know for years. Thank you for giving us some strategies to think about and talking with people in our own communities. I know in the city of Greenfield, several groups have worked with the chief of police here to encourage Greenfield police officers to be offered more training, and because of course there's the usual hazard of driving home after dark from your job, and you'll be stopped if you're black. And so it's a difficult situation where the chief of police says his officers don't need any more training. They're fine. And I'm kind of, I don't have another strategy. I'm working on that in myself, and if anybody has any interest in working with me on that, I'd like to hear it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for an amazing talk. It really moved me. I had to go out and get Kleenex. Thank you for sharing. Just to follow up on what was just said, there's this website called notreaching.com, and it's got these, it was a woman who started manufacturing these little transparent pouches that hold your driver's license, your registration, and your insurance, and it's on the driver's side, so you're not reaching, and it hooks to the air vent. And I just go around telling every young black guy that I interact with, you know, might be working at a store or whatever, I say, hey, are you familiar with this? You know, and I think as white people, we can all tell our white friends about this to kind of spread the word. I mean, it's a very small thing, but it could make the difference between a life and a death situation. I just say notreaching.com is where you can find it.
So generally, do we remain in this format, or do we break up into smaller groups, or what's? Oh, okay, all right.
We can remain in this format. If we're done, we can be done. If we've got, if you want to keep.
No, this is fine. If they have other questions,
Yeah,
we can
you
just do
tell
it
us
generally. Generally.
Tell us what.
No, I mean, we definitely, I know that you must have tons of questions, and we
Yeah.
definitely want to be a resource.
Okay.
I'm just wondering about the house that you're purchasing. So how that came to be? Was there a landowner that was willing to work with you? Was that all through individual donations? How did that come? How's that project? Where is it in its timeline, and how did it come to be?
All right, so probably a little over a couple years ago, we started realizing, okay, well, we're kind of exponentially increasing the number of asylum seekers that we're supporting. As word got out, we got more in terms of donations, and at the same time, more people seeking assistance. We deliberately said all of that we wouldn't have reserves, and so whatever it is that we receive at the end of the financial year, pretty much all of it is used up. So yeah, so we started exponentially increasing the number of people that we supported, and realized that, okay, well, we need to think more medium to long term, okay, what it is that the task force is going to look like in another 4, 5, 6 years, how many people we're going to be supporting, and what the needs will be. We went through the past couple of years where it expanded a lot more quickly, and we said, okay, well, we need to have, it would be nice for us to have a single location or 2 locations where we would house folks and not have to be paying as much in terms of rent, which has in Worcester, because of the ballpark and other stuff, rental prices are starting to skyrocket. And so we started feeling pressure in terms of that area. So we said, okay, well, we definitely want to purchase our own property where we can house at least 12 or about 12 people. And so last gala that we had, so last year's, was geared towards fundraising for that. We had an individual who offered to match up to $150,000, whatever we raised there. Yeah. And so we set about taking advantage of that. We were able to successfully raise the full 150 at the gala, and with the costs to purchase increasing, and with some issues with the donor, we ended up realizing that we had to fundraise some more money. And so instead of being able to actively look at properties this past winter and fall, we've had to spend all that time up until now identifying other sources of income. And just a couple of weeks, actually it was just last week, we were able to get the final foundation donation, and so now we're, over the next few weeks, couple of months, we're going to be actively looking at properties to purchase. And so hopefully by our next gala, we'll be able to come to folks and say, okay, well, this is the property that your support last year was able to help us to purchase. We estimate that we'll probably end up saving about $40,000 annually in doing this. So it was kind of a no-brainer because that's a huge chunk of money. And that's more than a month's worth of task force support costs. So we were able to help more people that way. And focus more on helping folks and less on the fundraising aspect of it. Even though, yes, we do enjoy coming out and speaking to folks, it's also time that could be used doing other stuff.
And just to add to that before another question, what the task force does is very unique because no other organization that I know here in the US is that comprehensive in terms of housing. You know, you get an apartment that's, you know, has the basic furnishing, you know, you have a nice bed, you have pots and stuff to cook, you have a fridge to put your stuff in. I remember when we just got here, my partner died, we reached out to an organization because we started out in New York for a few months, and that was hell on earth. You know, it was really rough. And the particular organization, they were able to say, maybe give you a little shelter for overnight, you know, if you were like in dire need of somewhere to sleep for the night and stuff, but they weren't able to take you off the street, put you somewhere where you know you are safe, where you have access to food, where you have access to somewhere to shower, to, you know, cook something and prepare your, so it's very unique. Give you a stipend at the end of the month so you can actually, you know, go and see your attorney, you can go to a movie if you want, you can buy something to eat, that kind of stuff. It's not, you know, a lot, so to speak, yeah, but it helps, if you get what I'm saying, you know, and nobody else does that. So for us finding somebody reaching out to us and an organization helping us like that and becoming a part of that, that's like really an eye-opener. I'm like, wow, this just doesn't happen anywhere. You know, the most they would say, oh, they'll give you a phone number and say, call this or call that attorney or whatever, but coming to sit down with us and we help you to get somewhere to stay, and no, they don't do that. They don't do that. So it's tremendous, the work that the task force does, you know. Yes, ma'am.
I was just thinking about all the intersections, listening to you talk, and I'm thinking about, you know, the churches have been traditionally really sanctuary for people who come for asylum, but they're also known, many of the churches, as being really against LGBT rights, and I'm just wondering how all of that interplays in, you know, everything that you represent in these intersections and what your experience has been for that. Like here you are, you're in a church, obviously that's accepting of both LGBTQ and, you know, being an asylum for people coming here. But I'm wondering what experiences you might have had that point the opposite, or what kind of impact that you're having on other churches in the area.
So, it's a great question. When you think to the fact that all of what we faced, or just most of what we faced back in our home country, is just because of religion, because of misguided aspects of Christianity. It's been eye-opening seeing that there are so many welcoming churches, but there are also so many that are not. The majority are not. We only go around and speak at churches that are accepting, you know, of course. And if there are others that aren't officially welcoming, and they're going through, in the UCC, it's called ONA. Is this a UCC church?
Yeah,
affirming, which is a formal process that deals with discussing what it is to be truly welcoming to LGBTQ individuals. It's a difficult process for pretty much every church that I've gone to speak at that is ONA. But yeah, it is. Yeah, so we're going to speak at churches that are welcoming of folks, and we try to
yeah. So just to add to that, it's an eye-opening experience because coming from a country, and I mean, as a teenager, I was in the church, a young adult and stuff, back in Jamaica, and the things that I've seen and experienced for myself, you know, if you are deemed homosexual or gay, LGBTQ, you have a demon in you. So you would have sessions where they try to exorcise that demon from you, long prayer sessions, and you know, it was just horrible. The church is, they call it, they defend the faith, and the faith, you know, LGBTQ and all of that, it defiles society and traditional family values. So they are advocates, you know, that's the society from which I am from, you know. And I remember many years ago, a friend of mine was found out to be homosexual in the church, and his entire belongings were taken out in the middle of the churchyard. His bed, his mattress, his clothes, everything, and he was stripped naked, and everything was burned. A big fire as a sign in the community that this is not welcome in the church and it's not welcome in the community. He had to run for his life. So coming here and finding a church that opens their arms and embrace you, it's really an eye-opening experience. You know, it's like when I found out about the task force at first, and I found out that it was affiliated with a church, I'm like, really? You know, I asked that question many times when I wrote to Pastor Judy at first, and you know, I found out her credential. I said, she's really a pastor. I'm like, a pastor willing to take me and my partner in as gay men, you know. So it was very eye-opening. We're not used to that. We are used to the church having these draconian laws and bylaws and measures that defend society against immoralities such as being LGBTQ, immoralities. So it's an eye-opening experience.
I mean, one of my hats as well is a delegate for the Massachusetts Conference of the UCC. And just recently I went to National Synod, which is our national conference. And there was a resolution that addressed the groups that were able to utilize the market space that is adjacent to the conference. And apparently 2 years ago at the last synod, there was a loose association of UCC churches that are anti-LGBTQ, and they apparently were sharing materials to such. And so there was a huge resolution, a huge debate this past synod around that topic, who it is that is able to use this space. It was interesting seeing both sides of the debate, right? Folks that are strong in their conviction that LGBTQ people choose to be such and didn't necessarily or shouldn't necessarily be allowed to marry and to have all the rights as everyone else. And that was difficult because those are the same views that caused me to leave Jamaica to come here. And seeing how and learning the statistics, right, that even within the UCC church, which is supposed to be so progressive, and accepting. Only 50% of the churches in Massachusetts are officially officially welcoming, and only 30% on the national scene are. So it's a lot of work that's left to be done. Definitely dialogue is important. Definitely sharing stories, just like when it comes to the people of color and their experiences, but also LGBTQ experiences. Sharing that with folks, that is what gets people onto your side. Right? When they see how it is and their actions that they might be deeming innocent are actually affecting people. That's what makes the difference.
Hi. Is this on? No.
Click it on.
Hi, thanks for speaking with us. There are quite a lot of churches here that are still performing exorcisms on LGBTQ. A lot of my friends have been through that here. And what they call conversion therapy, which is similar, but it's like a euphemism. I'm interested in asking you, how many of the people that are helped in your task force, are most of them gay men, or are there a significant percentage of lesbians and transgender people as well?
So, excellent question. The folks that we've helped, I'd say probably 70% or so are gay men. Probably another 25% lesbian, and then the last 5% would be trans folks. It could be for a myriad of reasons. I mean, we don't actively go out in the community, or at least in spreading the message in home countries, right? It's folks, whether through word of mouth or going online and researching resources that would come to us and get in touch with us. We have people who will get in touch with us and aren't able to actually come to the US, right? So to get a visa to come here, you're going to have to go through some background checks. You're going to have verifiable income and ties to your home country. And so, even more so in other countries, women might not necessarily have the resources that are required to get that first step, to obtain a visa to be able to come here. We've deliberately said that we're not going to enter the arena of getting folks here, but once they do get here, we will provide assistance. And so that accounts for, or possibly accounts for, that huge disparity in terms of the number of men and women that we've assisted.
And to add to that, for the trans people, it's much more difficult because, for example, in my society, a lot more of them are underground. It's very difficult because they have challenges, in terms of their identity, in terms of proving they're male or female, and they're signing up the forms, and then they appear to be a female, and they're on their birth certificate. So it's a lot of challenge. So when they do get here, trust me, they have climbed the mountains, and so it's very hard, especially for trans people. As I was saying, a lot of women, they don't have a lot of the resources like, men and stuff. So sometimes, my case, for example, I had a visitor's visa, a tourist and business visa, because I was an engineer, so I was able to travel and go to meetings and work, whatever. So it wasn't that hard. But in general, it's not easy to get a United States visa. It's not easy. It's very, very difficult because you have to. It's costly, and they question you a lot, and if you don't meet certain criteria in terms of income, being able to prove your income, it's a lot of things that you have to go through to actually be granted a visa.
Right, having ties to your home country that would say that, okay,
prove
you're
that
not
you're
going to
married,
run away, you're going to return
prove
to
that you
your
have
home
a
country.
house, prove that it's a lot. So it's hard for some of these people. For example, in Jamaica, a lot of these guys who are kicked out of their communities, they live in storm drains, they live in the gullies, they live in, you know, the worst sections of the community. A lot of them are living on the streets. So they don't have money to even go and get a passport. You know, some of them don't even have a birth certificate. It's not like here where now the government is changing this in Jamaica, but years ago when people were born, they die and don't even have a birth certificate. So it's even hard to get a death certificate if you don't even have a birth certificate. So a lot of these are challenges, real challenges that people face, so they can't get access to, you know, escape because the channels are very difficult to navigate.
Thank you guys so much. It's been humbling. I just had 2 points, and one of the, or a point and a question. The first one is for me as a white man speaking. I think it's so important for other white people to continuously, sort of every day, be decolonizing our minds and not just thinking about it when we need to, because having that privilege of a white body, and especially a white man's body, I can shut that off. And the constant work is what has been able to sort of help. I still make mistakes all the time and will continue to, but just constantly thinking about it. And sometimes that can be challenging in the valley, I think, when we're just surrounded by so much whiteness. The other point or question I had was around the countries of origin that maybe you guys work with. I say this specifically because I was doing research just very recently in Kakuma refugee camp in Kenya, and there is a community of LGBTQ refugees there who essentially UNHCR and the government of Kenya really, from my experiences and the experiences of working with these folks for months, is that the people there really don't know what to do with this group. And what I mean is specifically, they are put in a sort of protection area because of the violence. I mean, they're in a country that is overtly homophobic. So the police that are there on patrol are actually beating these people very seriously. So the UNHCR, and so are other groups in the camp. So the UNHCR pulled them out and brought them to Nairobi. But just recently, I'm still in touch with many folks, has put them back because the government's saying, we don't want these people here. And now I'm getting messages from folks saying, maybe I should just try to just leave and get asylum, seek asylum somewhere, like doing it the undocumented route. And so, but you know, I don't know what to say because most of them will be just living in refugee status, and that could be forever. So I'm wondering if you had folks from some places in East Africa or Africa, how have they been able to get to the U.S. or is there I think I'm wondering if it's because visas for these guys and women and peoples is extremely challenging. So is that something that you guys experience there at the place?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say almost on a daily basis I'll get an email or a Facebook message from someone who is trapped in Syria or Iran or in some other country, Kenya, Nigeria, all over, who are seeking avenues of getting out, right, coming to safety. They want to know more about asylum. They want to know how it is that they can get here and seek asylum. We are somewhat prohibited from walking with folks through that process, right? It could be considered a visa fraud to be doing that because you know for sure that they're not going to be returned to their home countries. And so, generally speaking, what I offer to folks are steps or links to resources that they can tap into and follow. And then I say, okay, well, here's our contact information, and once you get here, get in touch with us. But for sure, definitely showing folks about making sure that they have their passport, have a visa to the US or to another relatively safe European nation. If they don't, do they first have the resources to be able to find that? And if they can't, or they don't, getting in touch with Rainbow Railroad in Canada, which offers money to pay for visa applications and to pay for airfare and getting folks out of their home countries. So for folks there, and then also provide links to the USCIS's Asylum website, so they know, okay, well, what are the steps and what forms need to be filled out, so they can attain that. And then also provide a connection to or a link to our manual that we have that has resources for pro bono, has information on the various workshops that we've posted, talking about the timeline and steps that you probably will want to think about at various stages of the asylum process. So we provide those resources to folks. They might ask us a question or two, but in terms of like actively saying, okay, well, we'll help you put the form together or stuff like that. A lot of it has to be driven by the individual.
Can you tell me again what the name of that place in the railroad place?
Rainbow Railroad.
Rainbow Railroad.
Yes.
Yeah, they have been very helpful to even some of our fellow Jamaicans, because who are living on the streets and stuff. They have helped some of them to get into Canada, because the system in Canada is different from here, where I have friends in Canada who, when they landed in Canada, they were able to say, I'm here to seek asylum. And they were not detained, arrested, so to speak, and taken to camp. They were taken to, provided with shelter. They are immediately provided with, and I'm talking about the government doing this for them, ensuring that they are safe, they are sheltered, they get a stipend, and they get somewhere to stay until their case is processed. And I've had friends who have received asylum in 3 months after being in Canada. So it's way different from here, so they would have to reach out to countries that, I have friends also in the Netherlands that went there. They were detained when they said that, but they weren't taken to a prison of such. They were taken to a place where they were kept until they were processed and they were safe and questioned. They got a lawyer. Immediately they were provided, the government provided them with an attorney so that they would have a fair trial. It's different here. You are on your own. So coming here as an asylum seeker is one of the greatest risks. And in my mind, I'm 41. I said, the greatest risk I've ever taken in my life to this day. I've been shot at, I've been beaten up by police, I've gone through a lot. But I think the greatest risk that I've ever taken in my life is to seek asylum in the United States of America. Honestly. And I've not yet been granted asylum, but this is the greatest risk because you just don't know. That's the point. The unsurety, you just don't know. So it's a very serious risk because at the end of the day, you have to stand or sit in front of somebody and a perfect stranger and pour your life out to them and try to prove and convince them that you are who you truly are. You know yourself. You know what you have lived. You know what you have experienced. Like these people in those camps, they know what they're going through. But when you get here, you have to prove to somebody that you are that person. You have been going through all of that experience. Those experiences, prove to them, for them to decide to give you a second chance at life. If that's not the greatest risk in life, I don't know what is, in my mind.
Thank you for taking
Shen, could you turn off your commissioner?
She's already got her jacket
That
on.
was-
No, I can't. Hopefully keep it up.
Yeah, I'm a little.
I am too.
I wanted to say a couple things. One is, I've tried to do research. This is a unique program. When you say it doesn't happen other places, it doesn't happen other places. It's this one little church in Worcester that's done this program and that's grown so much. So just, it's such a fantastic program, and it's not replicated all over the country. It should be, it's not. Secondly, it's really easy to organize events for the LGBT asylum. You know, if you're part of any congregation or you're part of some community, something, they bring the speakers, they have the materials. It's really just in getting people together and then once they're there, asking them if they want to contribute. Which brings me to, what I know that Racial Justice Rising has made a contribution for you being here today and for the organization, but if others of us wanted to add to that, what are the checks made out to?
So Haddon Park Church, and then the memo put LGBT. You can also go online to our website and donate there as well. Of course, we prefer monthly donations. I mean, generally speaking, we're better able to forecast income that way, and so we know, okay, for sure, we can afford to take on a new asylum seeker. So monthly donations are generally preferred.
Can you repeat the writing check to?
Hadwin Park, Hadwen, Hadwin Park Church. And in the memo line, put LGBT, just so we know where to direct it.
So I just wanted to say, from one person of African descent to two people on the stage of African descent, I am so sorry that you have come here and had to experience things that a lot of African Americans experience. And it really makes me feel ashamed that you have to leave one country for one purpose and then come to another and then find out that because you're of African descent, that it's hard to survive as well. You know, it makes you wonder how people keep going, and it really makes me feel really bad that we have to contribute to that, to show the ugly side, our ugly side, the ugly side of America, to guests, no matter how you come here, you're guests. You know, and it shouldn't be that way. And I'm sorry.
Thanks for that. Coming around and speaking in these spaces, right, there is a little bit of a reassurance, right? I mean, it's different from the rhetoric that you will hear on the news, right, where it's all negative, it's all anti-me. But coming here and seeing the love and
this is where we get
support.
love. This is where we get love and support.
I mean, it's helpful. It's helpful to hear statements like those. It's helpful to have such a great attendance. It's helpful to have people actively showing welcoming and love and acceptance. It helps to get through the tougher days when your mind probably will be primarily preoccupied with the process and with all the negative other stuff that's in society.
The last thing I would say, and I've said this before elsewhere, when you see me, don't just see me as an immigrant. I don't like to be labeled, don't just label me as an LGBT person. Don't just label me as somebody who's, coming to your country. Just see me as a human being. See me as someone that has something to offer to society. The same me that taught hundreds of students, probably thousands of farmers that I have trained. I've written tons of documents. I've done so much for my society. The same society that rejected me. I don't want to come to another society and be rejected because of the color of my skin or who I choose to love. That's just my view. I am more than that. I just want to reintegrate and live. I just want to live. We were driving through, and I saw deers. I saw that, I'm like, wow, this is beautiful. I saw green. I love the green. I don't love the winter, but I love it. It's green and nice. I don't like the cold very much because I'm from a tropical country, you know. In Jamaica, I'm always in the countryside, meeting with farmers, driving through, checking on them, making sure everybody's okay. So I'm used to the greenery, the nice, fresh, beautiful air, you know. But I don't live there anymore because I've had to leave. But being here, I don't want to have to think, did I make a mistake because of how people perceive me, because of the color of my skin? Look beyond that. See me as somebody who can contribute to my community, contribute to nation building, contribute with my experience, contribute. That's what I'm here for. I don't live anywhere if I can't contribute to that community. I've never been to a school in my life where I've never contributed to the development of my student body. University the same. Church, wherever I need to contribute because that's what I'm there for. I'm not there to take, I'm there to give. I'm not here to take, I'm here to give. All I want in return is an opportunity to live and live in peace. And sometimes I ask, is that too much to ask for?
No.